Welcome to this three-part series on developing ISA volunteers for organizational success. Here in part one, we'll cover the basics. So here's what we'll cover in part one: volunteering trends, 10 ways to empower volunteers, defining expectations, job design, benefits, motivation, and job descriptions. So what's in this for you? First off, you'll learn how to be a better, more effective leader, professionally, voluntarily, and personally. You'll learn how to recruit effectively. That's practically the number one problem I hear from most people. You'll be able to improve volunteer retention. And last, would you rather learn from the mistakes of others or make them all yourself? You'll find a lot of lessons learned the hard way in this three-part series. So who am I to talk about this? I joined ISA in '83 and became an active volunteer in 1989, and I've been actively involved ever since. I'm now a Life Fellow. I received the Distinguished Society Service Award, that doesn't even exist anymore, former president of the world's largest section, director of 2 ISA divisions, former director of the Leadership Development Department, former Industry and Sciences Department vice president. I'm a co-chair of the ISA 84 Standards Committee. I've authored 2 ISA books. I've developed and instruct many ISA courses. Essentially, I've been there, done that. So this three-part series is based on my 3 decades of personal volunteer experience, along with many other volunteer leadership books that I've read. So employed and professional people have always volunteered. They do it to challenge and develop their talents and skills. Most understand it's just good business. According to a Gallup poll, 52% of all U.S. citizens over 13 volunteer in some manner. 84 million are associated with structured programs like Scouting and Red Cross. Interestingly enough, the higher the education level, the higher the number of hours. But that doesn't mean getting volunteers is easy, and times are changing. We all realize that people are stressed more and have less time. Can the roles that you have be shared with multiple people? Can you offer a social outlet, which is something people want? And realize that there is a growing pool of young, retired seniors that have the skills, the mobility, and the time that you need. So volunteers need flexibility, and we'll be covering this in greater detail in a moment. 10 ways to empower your volunteers. So you as a leader need to express your passion, and hopefully it will be contagious. Imagine if your team was cutting stones for a cathedral and a visitor asked one of your workers, "What are you doing?" Would you want your worker to reply, "I'm cutting stones," or "I'm building a cathedral"? 2, you need to demonstrate your competency. Workers often count on their supervisors to be experts in the work being done. The key is to serve as a positive role model. 3, have a caring attitude. Paid staff may have to tolerate an uncaring supervisor, but volunteers won't. 4, be accessible and approachable. Be careful to monitor your mood. Avoid looking harried or annoyed if a volunteer comes to you with a question. Volunteers may be reluctant to report unfinished projects or failures, so encourage them to bring problems to you early. 5, aim for consistency, because inconsistency can cause confusion, frustration, it's unproductive, and it has a negative effect on workers. It can cause volunteers to feel so overwhelmed that they simply quit, saying, "Who needs this?" 6, provide a job description, because without a clear job description, volunteers won't know what their responsibilities are. The work your group creates for volunteers should give them something to be responsible for, and they need to have the authority to think. They need to be responsible for results, and they need ways to measure whether results are being achieved, and I'll cover more on job description shortly. 7, offer training. Training volunteers reflects your belief in their potential. It prepares them for the actual work. Without it, learning will be at best ineffective and at worst incorrect. The consequences can actually include serious mistakes. 8, provide feedback. Your obligation to provide feedback is perhaps the most important. It's the easiest to do and the least likely to be done. Put simply, giving volunteers feedback is providing simple and frequent comments on the work. Imagine how frustrating bowling would be if there was a curtain in front of the pins preventing you from seeing the results of your accomplishments. How quickly might you simply give up the game under circumstances like that? And 9, share information. You'll need to develop efficient systems for sharing information. A misinformed or uninformed volunteer may make mistakes. They can feel isolated or devalued, and they'll experience a loss of commitment. They won't be motivated to give their best. And lastly, 10, express your appreciation. Have some sort of annual event, for example, a dinner, to celebrate and thank volunteers. Now, while formal expressions are essential, continual and informal words of appreciation are equally valuable. Giving recognition simply sustains volunteer enthusiasm. As far as defining expectations, here's a good example. All makes sense, doesn't it? So defining expectations. Volunteers, like all workers, need to know what's expected of them. So define what a good job is. And keep in mind that success is improvement, not perfection. Set moderately difficult goals, because moderately difficult work is more motivating than work that's too easy. And that's why a bowling lane is 60 feet long and not 5. Set goals and objectives with the volunteers and periodically evaluate their progress toward meeting their goals. Let your volunteers know how much you're counting on them and be sure they understand why their work is important. And when discussing your expectations with volunteers, don't forget to ask about their expectations too. People have a desire to feel secure. So how secure is this? And people want enjoyable work. How enjoyable is this? And people want to feel they're uniquely qualified for doing meaningful work. How meaningful does this work appear? So volunteer job design is a challenge of task analysis. Work's done in limited chunks of time. Volunteer time is carved out of a busy schedule, and it's precious. So examine the services your group provides. Carve out meaningful assignments that can be accomplished in 2 to 4 hour intervals. Your aim is to develop a series of specific jobs for which you can recruit different types of volunteers. Some might be ongoing short-term, one-term, or periodic on-call assignments. Some are individual assignments versus some people prefer a team assignment. Some might want to work on-site if you have such a location, or they want to do their work off-site. Some volunteers may not want direct client or public contact. For example, it could be the webmaster or newsletter editor. Others might want that social contact above all else. Some people want variety. Some people want consistency. Again, different roles can accomplish different goals and have different meaning for people. And most people prefer to ease into a new situation. So a short-term time frame or even some one-day projects can help people get their feet wet before they take the full plunge. And people expect to get something out of volunteering. What are you offering? Whether it's the opportunity to interact with others, being part of the team, getting a new understanding of your group and their cause, getting specific training that they might benefit from in a variety of ways, getting insight into their abilities, potentially just having something to add to their resume. Dale Carnegie said, "If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive." You can't motivate others. Attempting to motivate others is like pushing a string. Motivation is something that must come from within. Let your members express why they belong to your group. Do you really know? It may seem obvious, but then again, you may be surprised. I was certainly surprised by some of the responses when I asked members of the Houston board back when I became president. So ask, why did they join? Are they finding what they hope to get? Are they finding the experience satisfying? Why do they continue to belong? And how could things be better for them? So consider what you might need to do to make your group more satisfying to most members. Job descriptions. A clear job description will reduce conflict, reduce confusion, and reduce duplication of effort. Job descriptions must be in writing. Now, some may resist, it may seem all too bureaucratic, or some may be afraid that descriptions might scare prospects away. And do you realize how many ISA job descriptions are already on the ISA website for sections, divisions, departments, virtually the whole thing? So written job descriptions are worthwhile because, one, the process of writing each description makes everyone think about the work to be done. Is it too much work for one assignment? What training and supervision will be necessary? Two, it allows prospective volunteers to self-screen their willingness and their ability to do the work. And three, it becomes the basis of ongoing supervision and evaluation. Is the person doing what was agreed to at the start? Now, there are 7 essential parts and 2 optional ones. And keep in mind that people support what they help develop. So the 7 parts are title, the goals of the work unit, the purpose or goals of the particular position, the responsibilities, the training and the supervision plan, the requirements to do that position and the person needed, and the benefits that they can obtain. So these are the 7 essential parts, and 2 optional ones are restrictions and length of appointment. Now, instruction sheets are also helpful. The instructions for a job should be separate from the description of the role. Detailed checklists are also very helpful for one-time special assignments. So here's what we've covered in part 1 of this 3-part series: volunteering trends, 10 ways to empower volunteers, defining expectations, job design, benefits, motivation, and job descriptions. So this marks the end of part 1.